parents or educational institutions or society at large, everybody is extremely concerned about and engaged with giving children the tools and the skills and all the prerequisites that we find essential to equip a younger generation with so that they may make successful lives and navigate a new emerging digitized world most effectively, particularly when it comes to academic and scholastic areas, technology, whether it's artificial intelligence. All these areas are of great concern, and concerted efforts are being made, as I said, by all stakeholders to bridge various gaps that exist and bring children up to speed so that they may be able to become sort of valuable assets in a world going forward. However, in my own limited observation, and particularly because as an educator, I am regularly interacting with middle, high school children, even younger children, and college kids, there is one specific area in which sort of my own sense is that we are in a deficit as far as the amount of attention we're paying to it, and therefore the amount of work that's being done, which is, broadly speaking, the emotional quotient of the entire younger generation, which I think it might be fair to say that it's come into even more significance and importance now, because the moment you are confronted with a set of circumstances and a world that is largely uncharted and one that presents certain uncertainties regarding future, is even more sort of crucial and critical in order for children to become resilient teens and young adults and adults, so that they can actually use all their academic and scholastic knowledge, skills, and domain expertise, and not succumb to other pressures and neurosis and mental health issues. Now, this is a very, very, very critical area. I'm personally extremely invested in it. We are calling this session Raising Emotionally Adept Children. This is Talk Therapy brought to you by Driveway Devi. I'm Karthik on behalf of Driveway Devi, and I'm absolutely delighted that oftentimes when we have very senior people to discuss issues and problems surrounding the youth, of course, their perspective and their experience and wisdom is invaluable. But I'm very delighted that joining us today is a young psychologist and special educator, Tanaya Kulkarni. And it's going to be very interesting and important to gain her insight and understanding of this, because she is not only is she closely working with these children and the parents, but she is herself sort of closer to that generation, certainly than us foggies are. So, Tanaya, I would like to welcome you and extend a huge thanks for agreeing to do this.
Okay, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I'll just give an introduction of myself. So, my name is Tanya Kulkarni. Hello, everyone. And I am a psychologist and a special educator. I have recently graduated and I've done my master's in counseling psychology. And I am basically from Nasik. And I just love being around kids. And yeah, I think being with kids just make me happy. I hope that it makes them happy as well and they're not scared of me. But yeah.
Well, you've actually given me the perfect excuse to ask my first question, because I think, but usually, people your age aren't exactly fans of children. I want to understand before we get into the actual sort of topic, where does this love of children come from?
Uh, I agree. I totally agree with you that most people of my like my age, they run away from kids. Like they're like, we don't like children. They're annoying, and what sort of things I have heard from my friends. But I am on the other hand, I'm the complete opposite. I will run. I will actually dive where I see a kid. My friends call me a baby magnet. Every time I see a baby, I have this urge, a strong urge to just go and talk and have an interaction with that kid. Sometimes pull their cheeks. But yeah, I think, and getting back to your question, where did it started from? So I think it really started when I was in school. So I shifted schools when I was in sixth and seventh grade, and I was having a very difficult time
Hmm.
because it was a new environment, a new school, and I was per se in my teens. So it is already,
Which is a hard enough time as it is.
yeah, exactly. It was like you said, it's very difficult, and I was a new person in a new environment, so I had to fit in. I
Hmm.
was not able to make new friends. There were a lot of adjustmental issues that I was having, and
Hmm.
it was affecting my academics.
Hmm.
So I was at a very confused state where whom should I go and talk to? Should I go to my parents? Will they understand? Or I was there was this sort of a fear that will they understand my feelings, or will they just ignore it and be like it's okay, you will adapt to it. Should I go and talk to my teachers? Will they like scold me, or like will they have an answer to it? And since I couldn't make any friends, going to someone of my age was just not there. It was not an option anymore.
Sure.
So I was very confused and helpless. There was this sort of helplessness that I was feeling. So that's when I think it started, like the curiosity, how other kids face these issues. Do they actually face these issues, or is it just me? And how do they deal with it? And I'm always curious. It's like, I think it's sheer curiosity that I have. How do little kids and these little devils think? They explore the world, and how do they have this perception of the environment that is around them. So I think that's where it all started from.
Well, I mean, Tanya, thank you firstly for being so honest and forthright. I know that we don't want to sort of delve too deep into anything personal, but thank you for sharing that. And I'm very sorry to hear that you went through this arduous phase in your life. But I can also tell you from personal experience that whenever any of us does something born from personal experience and lived experience, it really provides, it is the best reason to do something.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. Now I want to pick your brains a little bit about your observations of the current times. Before that, I will share the caveat that India itna vast desh hai, and it's so diverse, and diversity in every sense of the word, whether it's culture, community, geography, sociology से लेके हर दायरे में. But in your observation, even in our vast, complex, beautiful country, what, according to you, are some factors, triggers, which are presenting the biggest challenges these days to young children? Whether they are consciously aware of it or not is a separate issue, but what are some of these things which are actually creating this pressure?
So as you said, I completely agree that India is such a vast, and it has the different cultures, different people, different thinking, different beliefs and everything. And a fit to all statement couldn't like do justice to it. But I think in today's world, I think these are the few triggers that I think most children will face. And the first one is, I think, just pressure,
Hmm,
parental pressure and peer pressure.
hmm.
It can be about academics, it can be to be the best in certain field, it can be to just fit in and to be this person that they might not be.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's most of us are traumatized by this. I think especially my generation would completely agree where I say that Sharma ji ki beti ko dekho, this statement, I think so I think that pressure to be the best, and there's always this constant comparison, that oh, see, your friend is doing this, you should also do this. Oh, this school is providing this, maybe this school is better than your current school. This constant comparison, I think, can be a trigger emotionally and mentally for kids. The second trigger can also be, I think, technology.
Hmm.
When used correctly, I think it's an amazing tool. It can provide a lot of information, it can provide a lot of educational things to us. But when used in whatever is not used in a moderation or in a limitation, I think is not good for us, and especially for kids. So
Before you move on to your next point, I would love for you to explain technology wala point a little more, both in terms
okay.
of what about it impacts and in what ways.
So I think using technology, I think in today's age, not being tech savvy, I'm sorry, tech savvy, or not using technology, I think it's not possible. We all need, there's always a need to use technology and we can't live without it. But using too much of it, like there are so many sources. There's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's WhatsApp today, you have YouTube, and there's so many multiple apps that I might even not be a part of, and being constantly on those apps, gaining so much information and stimulation from those apps, I think that is one thing that can be a trigger. And going on different apps and seeing 10 different things. When I if a child goes on Instagram, they might see different 10 different models, and that might not fit into their beauty standards, their aesthetics, into in a real world, in a reality check. So I think that can also be a trigger, an emotional trigger. It can trigger their confidence, it can trigger their self-esteem. Then same goes like, oh, this person at my age is doing so much, I am lacking somewhere, maybe I don't have these resources, and maybe that's why I am not successful. Or maybe I don't live in this big house or in this big city, and I don't have this, I don't have an iPhone, I don't have a MacBook. And then they might feel that they are I mean, the other people might be more superior, and I am not. There might be an inferiority complex that I might get. And I think that is a trigger that should be avoided completely. So yeah, that is what I meant by using technology. And using it to its advantages, I think it's really good. It gives us a lot of information, gives us a platform, to gain knowledge, to distribute knowledge. But when it is not used in a correct way, or overuse of it, can lead to many other triggers.
So if we understand you correctly, broadly speaking, I think you're saying that one, of course, is pressure from different quarters, societal pressure, whether it's from one's own peer group, whether it's one from one's teachers, from parents, from extended family, from a community, etc. And then, of course, there's the whole realm of technology, and I think we can include social media within that. In
Yeah.
fact, that is something that us adults are falling prey to. So obviously, I mean, we can't expect children to be suddenly resilient and unaffected by it. And as far as your pressure question goes and the need to fit in, etc., I can tell you, and I use this example all the time, although I suspect my school won't like it. But I happen to go to a boarding school where a vast majority of children at that time, and I'm talking about 30 years ago now. So, our only form of entertainment used to be that in our boarding house common room, there used to be a music system. And whilst and in the midst of everybody listening to Pink Floyd and Def Leppard and Brian Adams, I would go in there and put on my Bhimsen Joshi tape. And I cannot even begin to articulate the judgment, the labeling, the all of that took place. And my God, I mean, the kind of resilience it required to just be thick-skinned and be like, "Nahi yaar, main to yahi sunta hu." So tough luck for you. But yeah, that pressure is very much there, and if anything, it's only increased
Yeah.
with these children. I do have a question, although connected with technology only, because it is. I mean, it's easy for us to say moderation. That is very much the fact, and it's theoretically correct. But it's very difficult for parents, especially Tanaya, to navigate this because या तो आप अगर आप अपने बच्चों को लेट्स से स्क्रीन टाइम या डिवाइसेस नहीं अलाउ करते हैं तो वो बिल्कुल पिछड़ जाए. And if you do, give in to those demands and requests and desires, then of course it can open another can of worms. Practically speaking, how is it possible to find this mid path compromise moderation?
So I think every time, like every time if I had a rupee for a parent coming up to me and asking, how do I keep my child away from their tablets and my phones? I think I would be a millionaire by today. But but yeah, I think it's not that hard if you look at, like, if you really look into it, it's not really that hard. Technology is not really the enemy. How you use it and in what ways you use it, I think that's really important. So you shouldn't ban technology, so you should blend it into their daily life. So using screen times, I think specific screen time, like you can watch this and what to watch. And if it's something educational, an animal documentary or scientific video or maths problem, or something like that, so you should sit with the child and be with them and see and navigate how it works and what is going on, what are they watching, and everything. The other thing is, I think, free technology zone. I think it's a practice not just children, I think everyone of us should follow, like at dinner tables and bedrooms, where phones should not be allowed, any sort of laptops or devices after a certain point should not be allowed. It should be a time where families talk, you can sit with your friends, or just sit and enjoy your solo time, maybe drawing, coloring, play with your Legos. I Do what you want to do instead of having a screen in front of your eyes. I think that is important. And using this, even if your kid is using a tablet or a laptop, see it as a way of bonding. If you show them a story on their iPad, maybe later on you can bond with them, you can take them to a place. So if a child is watching an animal documentary, you can take them to a park and ask them, oh, we saw this tree in the documentary, what color is the tree? So it can also be a bonding time, and apart from the screen time. So using the technology in a right way, I think, is really important, and just not banning it or just not cursing it, using it to your own advantages and to your own strengths, I feel.
I think all of those are extremely valid points, and I can vouch for them again as a parent because if I'm hearing you correctly, a certain amount of content curation is very important, and of course, I mean, I think I would go so far as to say things like having maybe a no device zone in your home. Where nobody does it, and I certainly want to add one point here, and I keep saying this like a stuck record. Children learn by observation and based
Absolutely.
on what the parents model. They don't learn by lectures or pravachans or preaching. They don't learn by instructions. They will do what they see. You cannot be a parent who is saying, get off your screen while you're on your phone. I mean, come on.
I completely agree. Like, you can't be, scrolling through Instagram reels and, telling your kid not to watch the television or be too close to the screen. So, how, like, I think it's also a role of parents, how much they are involved in the parents, like in the child's life, and how creative they can get with them. Whether it's playtime, study time, or whatever, it's even if it's one-on-one personal time. So yeah, I agree to that.
Um, as we wrap this up, I want to bring up another facet of emotional development, which I feel is very, very important. Please correct me if I'm wrong. This is all extremely unscientific and based on my own observations. Not only in our country, basically दुनिया भर में हम जिस तरह से पर्सनालिटी डेवलपमेंट को, कॉन्फिडेंस एनहांसमेंट को अप्रोच करते हैं, वो मेरे को कभी 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 ऐसा लगता है कि वो एक बहुत सुपरफिशियल लेवल पे होता है. इट्स मोर अबाउट ऐसी टोन यूज कर लो, ये शब्द यूज कर लो, कॉन्फिडेंटली बोल लो, ठीक से अपराइट खड़े हो जाओ. And in my understanding, once there is a genuine self awareness and then acceptance and then pride from deep within an individual, that confidence that self pride leads to is unshakable compared to any other kind of confidence that you've thopoed onto yourself upar se like a kavach. I want you to share your views on confidence and then relating that to the emotional development?
I think, like you rightly said, that confidence that just someone is saying that be confident, talk in this way, or maybe dress up like this. It can last only for a brief period of time. It doesn't go a very long way. So fake it till you make it is just something that that is there for a brief period of time, and it can't go beyond that. So the confidence that you have from within, that comes naturally to you, when you know that what you bring to the table, what are your abilities, what are your skills, and what are you like, whatever you do, you have it in you that whatever I'm doing is just good and up to the mark. That inner confidence, I think, is the true confidence, and it doesn't come from anything else. And telling kids that if you dress up like this, if you do this, and you should speak like this, I think it doesn't work, because then they would, I think, just to say it for the sake, I think it just seems very fake and, like you said, superficial, because it doesn't make sense to them, because it's just for the time being that it is coming for. And when I think that situation passes away, or they come into a new situation, and they don't have anyone to guide, or a certain situation comes to their way, I think it's the inner confidence that will, take them to the destination, and that will help them. So I think having that ability, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and having this thing that okay, I can work on my weaknesses, or maybe I should improve here, is the real confidence that the kids today should work on.
Absolutely. I just want to quickly share, primarily with our viewers of this particular episode, that the reason you find us and me not bringing up the more obvious questions relating to this topic, how do we build and enhance emotional learning and quotient, etc., is because we have had those conversations. Not that ऐसा है कि वो enough हो गया, but and also those are things that are sort of relatively easily found out online and through various other resources, and so I thought that it'll be more interesting to delve into slightly allied areas finally, and this might sound like a joke, but it's not meant to be. If I was to ask you that you have to set an exam paper that couples who want to become parents have to take and pass in order to be allowed to become parents, what might be some questions you'll definitely put onto it?
I think there should be a disclaimer, and I know it might sound very funny, but I say it in all seriousness. Do you really want to be parents?
Hmm.
And the sort of this, have you thought about the sort of responsibility that it comes with, whether be changing diapers, cleaning up their spit outs, and not just providing the basic like shelter, food, and water. Parenting goes beyond that. So have you thought about this? I think this should be the disclaimer for the question paper. And once they say yes to it, I think the questions that would follow would be, the first thing would be, I think, name, if you I think this is more for who are already existing parents. So I think the first question would be, do you really know your child, and can you name their first favorite food, favorite person, favorite place, favorite cartoon character, and what is their favorite color? I think
Hmm.
just knowing your kid,
Hmm.
just the basics, because today, like I'm a working professional where I work with kids and parents every single day. So every time I call a parent up, most of the time it's the mother answering the call. And
Absolutely.
if by chance a father picks up the call and says, and if I ask them, oh, there was a meeting you didn't attend, or this is what was given to your child, we didn't get
Hmm.
the results back, whatever it is, the father are always like, oh, I didn't know about it, I have no idea what is going on. You should maybe talk to the mother. I'll give her
Hmm.
contact number.
Hmm.
And I think it's not just being physically present. It's also about being emotionally and mentally being there for the kid. So I think
Absolutely.
that's one thing. Second thing would be, define success without naming the kids' achievements, without saying that if money is involved. So I think that is one thing. I think that just tells them, what kind of parenting they like style they're approaching is, what type of parents they are, and what type of upbringing they're providing to their child. I think that will make a lot of sense once they answer that question. Third thing would be, I think mostly, what what would you do if you were at your child in your child's shoes? What was that? And that is one thing, because mostly as parents we think that whatever we are doing is right for the kid.
Hmm.
And I know all parents, like regardless from where you come from, what your background is, I think all parents wants what is best for their child.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes, in that way that, I want the best for my child, they really are taking away the present happiness or, present needs of that child.
Hmm.
So I think if one day you can be in their child's shoes, what do you think would be the best for them? I think that is the question. Third thing I think would be, if your child comes to you with a bad exam result, what would you do first? I think it's a multiple choice question that I would provide. Would you panic? Would you blame the teacher, or would you like to make it a learning experience over a dessert or a favorite food or a quality time with the child?
Hmm.
And I think that would also give us an idea, like what parents think and what sort of environment is the child going through. And lastly, if what as a parent, what do you when you were a child, what do you think your parents should have done, or what are the sort of things that you needed? And as a parent today, what do you think you can provide, or what changes you can do, what you didn't get in your childhood, or what you can improve as a parent? I think that would be the last question I would add to the question paper.
Wow, that's remarkable. I mean, you've covered all the most critical sort of areas, whether it is an ethos of what is the parenting ethos, what is I particularly loved your second question, which revolves around their understanding and perception of success. And then you've sort of very subtly addressed the generational, ripple effect. Absolutely brilliant. I think this should be made mandatory. Wonderful. You've been very, very insightful, and I think that's been a important conversation. I'm really, really happy that more and more young people such as yourself are coming into the broader area of mental health. So, all the very best with your future endeavors, career. I'm very happy, and I'm certain that the students you're interacting with are having fun and they don't consider it a torture. So, thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.